My name is Isaiah Walker, 32 years old, and until last month I thought I understood what family meant. When my dad called saying he booked me a flight home to Chicago from Seattle to reconnect with everyone, something felt right for once. Then I landed at O'Hare, and my brother Jackson handed me a diaper bag. The next 3 words shattered everything. We're off to Europe. What I did next changed our family forever. If you're watching this from a family gathering, comment where you're tuning in from and subscribe to hear how I stood my ground. Life in Seattle had been good to me. As a senior software engineer at one of the major tech companies, I was living the dream many people chase: waterfront apartment with a view of Puget Sound, 6-figure salary that let me travel whenever I wanted, and enough financial stability to never worry about rent or bills. I had built a small circle of close friends who'd gather for weekend hikes or craft brewery tour. But relationships, that was another story. 3 serious girlfriends in the past 5 years, all ending the same way. They'd eventually point out how I kept everyone at arm's length emotionally, how I'd work late even when deadlines weren't looming, how I'd retreat into my online gaming world whenever conversations got too personal. My therapist called it attachment avoidance, but I preferred to think of myself as independent. Truth is, I was just recreating the emotional distance I grew up with. My late-night Call of Duty sessions with online friends were just another way to feel connected without risking real vulnerability. Every promotion at work meant more responsibilities, more hours, more reasons to avoid looking too closely at what was missing. Back in Glenview, the Chicago suburb where I grew up, my family had their own version of success. My father Thomas built his commercial real estate business through sheer force of will and an intimidating personality that steamrolled opposition. Growing up, his approval came with conditions, straight as athletic achievements, prestigious schools. Emotions were messy distractions from the path to success. My mother Judith was the ultimate people pleaser, always smoothing over tensions at family gatherings, making excuses for Dad's absence at school events, and somehow maintaining the illusion of domestic harmony. Whenever Dad's temper flared or his criticism cut too deep, she'd pull me aside after with cookies and a gentle, "You know your father loves you, he just shows it differently." Then there was Jackson, my older brother by 3 years. The golden child. Harvard Business School graduate turned investment banker, now living in our childhood suburb with a house 4 times the size of our parents' home. His Christmas cards showed the perfect American family: beautiful wife Sophia, adorable kids Emma and Noah, the golden retriever, the luxury vacations. But like everything in our family, the surface never told the whole story. Being the responsible one started early. When Jackson blew his college fund sophomore year on a disastrous startup idea, guess who Dad called to loan his brother money from his scholarship savings? When Jackson's bachelor party in Vegas got out of hand, guess who flew in to handle the hotel damages? When Jackson needed help with the down payment on his first house despite making twice my salary, guess who transferred their emergency fund? The pattern was always the same. Urgent call from family about a crisis only I could solve, promises of change and appreciation, followed by months of silence until the next emergency. Last Christmas was the breaking point. Flying home for what was supposed to be a 3-day family celebration, only to arrive and discover I was actually there to babysit while everyone attended a neighbors-only holiday gala. 4 hours turned into an overnight stay with 2 kids I barely knew, while Jackson and Sophia disappeared for a much-needed date night. I left the next morning without saying goodbye, ignoring the half-hearted text apologies. 3 months of minimal contact followed, just enough to maintain appearances in family group chats. I was finally setting boundaries, focusing on building my own life in Seattle. Then Dad called in July. Something was different about his voice. The usual commanding tone was replaced with something almost vulnerable. He mentioned family therapy sessions they'd been attending. Words I'd never heard from him before. Healing old wounds, building stronger bonds, acknowledging past mistakes. "We've all been doing some serious reflection, Isaiah," he said, clearing his throat uncomfortably. "Your mother and I, well, We haven't always been the parents you deserved. I nearly dropped the phone. Jackson's been part of this too. We all want to make things right, son. I've booked you a first-class ticket home for 2 weeks in August. No agenda except reconnecting. There are things we need to share with you in person. I remained skeptical but hopeful. People can change, right? The first-class ticket seemed like a genuine gesture. Dad knew my vacation time was precious, and this was a significant ask. I requested the time off, surprising my manager who'd never seen me take more than 5 consecutive days in 4 years. The week before the trip, I found myself shopping for gifts for Emma and Noah. Despite barely knowing them, I researched age-appropriate toys for a 4-year-old girl and 2-year-old boy. I even scheduled an extra therapy session to discuss setting healthy expectations for the visit. Remember, you can hope for change while protecting yourself, my therapist advised. Write down exactly what reconnection would look like to you, so you'll recognize if it's actually happening or not. That night, I journaled about what genuine reconciliation might feel like. Simple things, really, being asked about my life and actually listened to, not being volunteered for family tasks without discussion, acknowledgement of past patterns, mutual respect. The day before my flight, Dad texted that he couldn't pick me up as planned, something about a last-minute therapy appointment that couldn't be rescheduled. Jackson would meet me instead. A small red flag, but I brushed it aside. This was progress, and progress isn't always perfect. The first-class flight from Seattle to Chicago gave me 6 hours of unexpected peace. Reclining in the comfortable seat with a decent whiskey, I allowed myself to imagine a new chapter in our family story. Maybe the therapy was working. Maybe we could build something authentic from the ashes of our dysfunctional past. I scrolled through old photos on my phone, finding moments of genuine connection amid the staged holiday portraits, fishing with Dad when I was 12, helping Mom in the garden, even a rare candid shot of Jackson and me laughing at some forgotten joke. When we landed at O'Hare, I texted Jackson I'd arrived. No response. Second text 20 minutes later while waiting for my bag. Still nothing. An uneasy feeling began creeping in as I wheeled my luggage toward the arrival area, scanning the crowd for my brother's face. I almost walked past him. Jackson was slumped against a pillar near baggage claim, eyes glued to his phone, looking nothing like the polished financial executive from his LinkedIn profile. His designer shirt was wrinkled, his usually perfect hair disheveled. Beside him was a double stroller with 2 very unhappy children. Emma, the 4-year-old, was whining and tugging at her shoes. Noah, the toddler, was red-faced and crying, straining against the stroller's straps. Jackson didn't look up until I was directly in front of him. Finally, he said, not even attempting a smile. We've been waiting forever. No hug, just an awkward side embrace as he continued typing something on his phone. Emma suddenly noticed me and wrapped herself around my leg, despite having only met me twice before. Uncle Isaiah. Pick me up, she demanded, arms outstretched. I obliged, surprised at how naturally she came to me. Noah continued wailing, while Jackson stepped away to take a call. Yeah, I've got him, we're heading out now, he said to someone on the phone, glancing at his watch. When he returned, he immediately thrust an overstuffed Mickey Mouse diaper bag into my free hand. So listen, he said, finally making eye contact, there's been a change of plans. We're off to Europe tonight. I asked, shifting Emma to my other arm as the diaper bag slipped off my shoulder. Mom, Dad, Sophia, and me, he replied, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. 3 weeks through France, Italy, and Greece. It's been planned for months. The family therapy was real. That's where we decided we all deserved this break. I stared at him, struggling to comprehend. But Dad said this trip was about reconnecting. With me. Jackson had the decency to look slightly embarrassed. It is. Just not with us exactly. Our regular sitter canceled last minute, something about a family emergency. Without someone to watch the kids, the whole trip was in jeopardy. Dad suggested you were looking to rebuild relationships anyway, so. My brother's voice faded into background noise as the reality sank in. There was no family reconciliation, no healing of old wounds. I wasn't flown home for reconnection. I was flown home to be the emergency childcare that saved their luxury vacation. "Just be with them," Jackson said, checking his watch again. "They're great kids. Emma has swim lessons on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Noah needs his inhaler twice daily. All the details are written down somewhere in the bag." Emma was now playing with my hair, while Noah's cries had escalated to screams. Another traveler gave us a sympathetic look as she passed. "Jackson, I can't just—" I began, but he was already backing away, pulling out his car keys. "The house key is in the bag. Our flight's in 4 hours, and I still need to pick up Sophia. Emma knows the routines. You'll figure it out." "Does Uncle Isaiah get to be our babysitter now?" Emma asked innocently, looking between us. Jackson ruffled her hair without really looking at her. "Something like that, sweetie. Be good for Uncle Isaiah, okay?" He was gone before I could formulate a response, leaving me standing in the terminal with 2 children and a diaper bag. Noah's crying had drawn attention from airport security, who were now watching us with concern. "Daddy's always leaving," Emma whispered into my ear, her small arms tightening around my neck. The Uber ride to Jackson's suburban home was excruciating. Noah cried the entire 30-minute journey, while Emma peppered me with questions I couldn't answer. The driver's eyes in the rearview mirror shifted from sympathy to annoyance as I struggled to find Noah's pacifier in the chaotic diaper bag. Jackson's house was every bit the showcase I expected: 5 bedrooms in an exclusive neighborhood, with manicured lawns and luxury cars in every driveway. But inside told a different story. Dishes piled in the sink, toys scattered across every surface, laundry baskets overflowing in the hallway. It looked like no one had properly cleaned in weeks. The refrigerator contained nothing but condiments, a half-empty bottle of white wine, and some questionable takeout containers. A handwritten note on the counter listed bare minimum care instructions. "Kids like mac and cheese. Emma allergic to strawberries. Noah needs inhaler before bed." I carried the sleepy children upstairs, finding their bedrooms easily enough by the themed decor: princess everything for Emma, transportation motifs for Noah. Despite the expensive furniture and toys, both rooms felt neglected. Emma's bed was unmade, Noah's crib sheets stained. The nightlight in Emma's room had a burnt-out bulb. As I tucked Emma in for a much-needed nap, she looked up at me with serious eyes too mature for a 4-year-old. "Daddy said you'll stay until they come back from vacation," she stated, clutching a worn stuffed rabbit. "That's what it looks like," I replied, unsure what else to say. "Noah's medicine is almost gone," she added matter-of-factly. "The pharmacy lady knows us." With both kids finally asleep, I sat on the stairs and tried calling my father. Straight to voicemail. I texted Jackson, receiving only a brief response. "Boarded. Signal spotty for next few weeks. Emma knows where everything is." I was completely on my own with 2 small children I barely knew, in a house I'd never visited before, with no real instructions, no pediatrician information, and apparently a critically low supply of medication for a toddler with asthma. This wasn't a family reconnection. It was a family ambush. The first night was a nightmare. Both children woke up disoriented and upset around midnight. Emma refused to sleep in her own bed, while Noah developed a barking cough that quickly turned into an asthma attack. I frantically searched the house for his inhaler, finally finding it nearly empty in the master bathroom. With no information about his pediatrician or medical history, I could only follow Emma's surprisingly detailed instructions on how to administer the medication. The 4-year-old calmly demonstrated the proper technique while I held a wheezing Noah, her little voice steady. 3 puffs, count to 10 between each one. By 3 a.m., both children were finally asleep again, in my bed, one curled on either side of me. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my 5th call to my father going straight to voicemail. The text from Jackson simply read, "Landed in Paris. Kids usually settle by second night." Morning brought no relief, just new revelations that made my stomach twist with each innocent comment from the children. "Does Mommy know you're staying with us?" Emma asked while picking at her breakfast, the only cereal I could find in the pantry. "I'm not sure," I answered carefully. "Where is your mommy?" Emma shrugged with the casual acceptance only children can manage. "Mommy doesn't live with us anymore. She has a pretty house with a garden." Noah, strapped in his high chair, brightened at this. "Go Mommy house. Go now." "Not today, buddy," I said, an uncomfortable suspicion forming. "Emma, when did you last see your mommy?" She counted dramatically on her fingers. "Many, many days. But I can call her on my special phone when Daddy isn't looking." What followed was a morning of disturbing discoveries. Through Emma's innocent chatter and my own detective work around the house, I pieced together that Sophia and Jackson had separated months ago. The children typically split time between parents, but according to Emma, they hadn't been to Mommy's pretty house in several weeks. Noah's asthma medication required daily management, but the prescription bottle in the bathroom contained only 2 more doses. A stack of mail on Jackson's desk included past-due medical bills and a letter from a pediatric respiratory specialist requesting follow-up for Noah. Most telling was the custody document I found hidden in a kitchen drawer, a temporary arrangement giving Jackson primary custody, with Sophia having weekend visitation. The court date for a permanent decision was scheduled for the week after their European vacation would end. When I finally reached my father during their Paris layover, his dismissive tone confirmed my worst suspicions. "You're overreacting, Isaiah," he said, the background noise of a busy restaurant nearly drowning his voice. "It's just babysitting. We all needed this break, especially Jackson after everything with the divorce." "What divorce?" "No one told me they were divorced," I countered, keeping my voice low as Emma colored at the kitchen table. "Separated, divorce pending." "Same thing," Dad replied impatiently. "Look, your brother's been through hell with Sophia leaving. The least you can do is help out for a few weeks." "Few weeks?" Jackson said 3. A pause. "Well, it might be closer to 4. We added a grease extension." The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. "You knew the sitter would cancel, didn't you?" Another pause. "Don't ruin this for us, Isaiah. After everything we've done for you over the years, this is the one time we've asked for help." The call ended abruptly, leaving me with a decision that would define not just the next month, but potentially my relationship with my family forever. My first instinct was to book the next flight back to Seattle, call Child Protective Services, and wash my hands of the whole situation. But looking at Emma carefully coloring inside the lines and Noah contentedly stacking blocks, I couldn't bring myself to be yet another adult who abandoned them. My inbox was filling with urgent messages from work, the project I'd left in capable hands now facing unexpected challenges that only Isaiah can solve. My carefully constructed life in Seattle was unraveling in real time while I searched YouTube for how to detangle toddler hair without tears. This pattern of being used by my family stretched back as far as I could remember. Always the responsible one, always the fixer, always the safety net. My therapist had been working with me for months on setting boundaries, on recognizing manipulation, on valuing myself enough to say no to unreasonable demands. Yet here I was again, cleaning up Jackson's mess, literally and figuratively. The difference was that this time, innocent children were caught in the crossfire. I called my boss, explained the situation as honestly as I could, and requested extended emergency family leave. Then I began searching online for information about Sophia, starting with the most obvious place, social media. What I found contradicted everything my family had implied. While Jackson's Instagram showed carefully curated family photos from months ago, Sophia's revealed a woman clearly devoted to her children. Recent posts showed her working as a pediatric nurse, volunteering at a children's hospital, and maintaining a modest but cheerful apartment with a small garden, just as Emma had described. The divorce filing cited irreconcilable differences, but neighbors I spoke to while taking the children to the park painted a clearer picture. Jackson rarely spent time with the children even before the separation, working late and traveling often. The previous babysitter had quit permanently, not due to a family emergency, but because of Jackson's chronic unreliability and last-minute schedule changes. The refrigerator's barren state, the minimal supplies for the children, and even Emma's casual comment about calling her mother secretly all pointed to a household in dysfunction. Not because a mother had abandoned her family, as my parents had implied, but because a father was more concerned with appearances than actual parenting. The most heartbreaking moment came when Emma showed me her special phone, an old deactivated smartphone she used to pretend call her mother, complete with one-sided conversations about her day. "I pretend she can hear me," Emma explained, "even when the real phone doesn't work." I found myself at a crossroads, torn between family loyalty and what was clearly right. If I left, these children would suffer. If I stayed and did nothing, I was complicit in what appeared to be a deeply unfair situation. The third option meant potential estrangement from my family, but for the first time in my life, that didn't seem like the worst outcome. With the children finally napping, I sat in Jackson's home office and made a list of what I knew versus what I'd been told. The gap between those realities was where I would find my answer. Over the next 3 days, I focused on establishing stability for Emma and Noah while gathering information. We started with a proper grocery shopping trip, their wide eyes at the fully stocked cart revealing how unusual this was. I created a structured daily routine with regular meals, outdoor play, and consistent bedtimes, basic parenting that shouldn't have felt revolutionary but clearly was to these children. "Are you staying forever?" Emma asked on our third night as I tucked her into bed with a story. "No, sweetie, not forever," I answered honestly. "That's what everyone says," she replied with a wisdom no 4-year-old should possess, clutching her rabbit tighter. "Then they leave anyway." Emma's preschool teacher was my first real source of insight. When I dropped her off, introducing myself as her uncle temporarily caring for her, Ms. Patris's expression shifted from professional friendliness to careful concern. "Emma's had a difficult few months," she said, watching the little girl join her classmates. "Her emotional drawings have been concerning. Last week's family portrait showed everyone with their backs turned to each other." She hesitated before continuing. "Her mother used to be very involved classroom volunteer, never missed a conference. We haven't seen her in weeks, though Emma talks about her constantly." From the emergency contact card in Emma's backpack, I finally had Sophia's information. Before calling her, however, I wanted a complete picture of the situation. Noah's pediatrician appointment, which I scheduled after finding his nearly empty inhaler, revealed more troubling information. Dr. Reyes reviewed Noah's chart with growing concern. "He's missed 3 follow-up appointments in the past 2 months, she noted. "His asthma requires consistent management, especially with his history of hospitalizations. Has your brother mentioned the specialist referral?" I shook my head, learning for the first time that Noah had been hospitalized twice for severe asthma attacks, information Jackson had never shared. "And where is Ms. Walker today?" Dr. Reyes asked, clearly accustomed to seeing Sophia at these appointments. The previous babysitter, a college student named Jenna who agreed to meet for coffee, provided crucial context. "Mr. Walker would constantly change schedules last minute, expect overnight stays with no notice, return hours after promised times," she explained, showing me a series of text exchanges. "But the real reason I quit was the children always seemed so confused about when they'd see their mom. Mr. Walker would promise they'd go to her house on Friday, then suddenly cancel, and the kids would be devastated." Jenna lowered her voice. "Between us, I think he was using the kids to punish her for leaving. I heard him on the phone once saying, 'If you just come home where you belong, you could see them anytime.'" The financial documents in Jackson's office revealed another dimension to the story. Behind the facade of success were gambling debts, missed mortgage payments, and credit cards nearing their limits. A browser history showed frequent visits to online poker sites, sports betting platforms, and payday loan services. By contrast, Every social media post and public record related to Sophia showed stability and child-focused decisions. Her LinkedIn profile detailed her career as a dedicated pediatric nurse at Chicago Children's Hospital. Photos showed loving involvement with the children before the separation. Despite what must have been financial struggles as a single mother, her child support payments to Jackson were consistently on time, according to bank statements. What finally pushed me to action was finding an online fundraiser organized by Sophia's nursing colleagues, titled "Help Sophia Fight for Her Children." The description outlined her legal battle for fair custody, the character assassination she'd endured during proceedings, and her determination to provide a stable home despite limited resources. With a clearer understanding of the situation, I sent Sophia a text, keeping it simple and direct. "This is Isaiah, Jackson's brother. I'm currently caring for Emma and Noah while the family is in Europe. I think we should talk." Her response came within minutes. "Are the children okay?" Not anger at Jackson. Not questions about why I had her number. Her first concern was for her children. During our phone conversation that evening after the kids were asleep, Sophia's side of the story emerged with painful clarity. "Jackson's gambling got out of control last year," she explained, her voice tight with suppressed emotion. "I tried everything: counseling, support groups, financial safeguards. When I found out he'd taken out a second mortgage without telling me, I realized the children and I weren't safe financially anymore." The separation had been her attempt to create stability, not abandon her family. Jackson's family wealth and connections had influenced the temporary custody arrangement, despite his minimal actual involvement with the children. "I'm fighting for joint custody at minimum," Sophia continued. "But I'm a nurse going up against a walker with their family lawyers. My visitation has been reduced 3 times in 2 months, always with some last-minute excuse. I haven't seen them in almost 3 weeks now." The fear in her voice was palpable. "I can't risk rocking the boat before the final hearing. Jackson's threatened to go for full custody with no visitation if I cause problems." We agreed to meet the following day at a neutral location, a playground where the children could be present and comfortable. That night, I called a law school friend who practiced family law in another state, seeking general advice without breaking confidentialities. His guidance was clarifying. Document everything, focus on the children's well-being, understand the legal boundaries, and consider what would truly serve Emma and Noah best. By morning, I had formulated a plan based on principles rather than family loyalty, one that prioritized the children's needs above all else. I would support Sophia's rightful place in their lives while maintaining my own integrity, even if it meant permanent damage to my relationship with my brother and parents. Some decisions are clear not because they're easy, but because the alternatives are unthinkable. The playground meeting was both heartbreaking and affirming. Emma spotted Sophia immediately, breaking away from me with a shriek of "Mommy!" that turned heads across the park. Noah, recognizing her voice, strained against the stroller straps, his entire body wriggling with excitement. Sophia knelt on the gravel, arms wide open, tears streaming down her face as she clutched both children. My babies," she repeated, kissing their heads, faces, hands, as if memorizing them through touch. I stood awkwardly to the side, feeling like an intruder on this raw family moment. When Sophia finally looked up at me, her eyes held no anger, just profound gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered over Emma's head. "Thank you for bringing them." The children's reaction told me everything I needed to know. This was not a mother who had abandoned her family. This was a mother whose children represented her entire world. For the next hour, I observed their interaction while maintaining a respectful distance. Sophia had brought a small picnic, complete with Noah's favorite dinosaur-shaped sandwiches and Emma's preferred apple slices with peanut butter. She knew every preference, every comfort measure, every small detail about her children that only comes from deep, consistent involvement. When Emma scraped her knee on the slide, she ran to Sophia without hesitation. When Noah grew tired, he curled naturally into his mother's lap. These weren't children reconnecting with someone unfamiliar. This was a reunion with their safe place. Over lunch, while the children played nearby, Sophia showed me photos of her apartment on her phone, a modest two-bedroom with cheerful children's rooms clearly prepared for their visits. Each room had duplicate comfort items, the same stuffed rabbit Emma cherished at Jackson's house, the same blue blanket Noah couldn't sleep without. "I keep everything ready, even when the visits get canceled," she explained. "I never want them to feel like they don't have a place with me." She scrolled to pictures of a small garden plot behind the apartment building. "Emma helps me grow vegetables. She loves seeing the changes each week, but it's been almost a month since she's been able to check on her carrots." As Sophia spoke about the children, the contrast with Jackson's approach became stark. Where he discussed them in terms of schedules and logistics, she spoke of their personalities, dreams, fears, and growth. While Jackson's house contained expensive toys gathering dust, Sophia carried a small notebook documenting Emma's favorite stories and Noah's new words. After reviewing the custody agreement details together, we arranged a phone consultation with Sophia's attorney, Lisa Chen. The legal situation was precarious but not hopeless. The temporary arrangement gives Jackson primary physical custody, but nothing in the agreement prohibits him from allowing the children to stay with their mother while he's unavailable, Lisa explained. However, the optics of him leaving the country without informing the court while a custody case is pending, that's problematic for him, not for Sophia. We discussed the children's physical and emotional needs at length. Noah's untreated asthma issues required consistent care that had been demonstrably better under Sophia's supervision, according to medical records. Emma's emotional regression during the separation was documented by her preschool teacher. The children should stay with their mother during the Europe trip, Lisa concluded. From a legal standpoint, this actually works in Sophia's favor. Jackson left the country without securing proper childcare, instead leaving them with a relative who's essentially a stranger to them. Meanwhile, their mother is available, capable, and legally entitled to parenting time. I agreed to remain involved as a mediator and witness, promising to document the transition and the children's adjustment. The plan was set. The children would stay with their mother where they belonged. The execution was simultaneously simple and the hardest thing I'd ever done. We returned to Jackson's house, where I helped the children pack their essential belongings, favorite toys, comfort items, necessary clothes. I explained to Emma in age-appropriate terms that she and Noah would be staying with Mommy while Daddy was away. "For how many sleeps?" she asked cautiously, as if afraid to hope. "Many sleeps," I answered, watching her face light up. I carefully documented the condition of Jackson's house, the limited supplies for the children, and copied important medical and legal documents. I transferred the remaining medication and care instructions to Sophia, who already knew Noah's treatment plan better than anyone. As we prepared to leave, Sophia stood in the foyer, tears welling again. "I never thought I'd be in this position," she said quietly. "Fighting to be with my own children. Thank you for seeing through whatever story they told you." The children settled into Sophia's car, with none of the anxiety they'd shown during our drives. Noah immediately stopped fussing once secured in his car seat. Emma chattered excitedly about showing her mother her new drawing skills. I followed them to Sophia's apartment, helping carry bags up to the second-floor unit. The modest space was exactly as the photos had shown, meticulously child-proofed, warmly decorated, and filled with evidence of a mother's love. Emma immediately ran to her room, exclaiming over familiar toys and books. Noah toddled straight to a reading nook filled with cushions, grabbing a well-worn board book and settling in as if he'd never left. The children's visible relief and happiness in their mother's home cemented the rightness of our decision. Some actions come with consequences you can feel in your bones, for better or worse. This one felt right despite the storm I knew was coming. It arrived sooner than expected. Just after dinner, as I was preparing to leave Sophia's apartment, my phone exploded with notifications. Jackson had discovered the children were gone. "Where are MYKIDS?" read his first text, followed quickly by 5 missed calls. My father's voicemail was equally aggressive. "Whatever you think you're doing, stop it now." There will be serious legal consequences. Call me immediately. My mother's approach was predictably emotional. Isaiah, how could you do this to your brother? After everything we've done for you. Please bring the children back before this tears the family apart. The messages escalated rapidly from confusion to rage. Jackson, I swear to God, if you've taken them to Sophia, I will never forgive you. Dad, you have no idea what you've done. This will destroy your brother's custody case. Mom, we're cutting our trip short. We'll be on the next flight home. I responded to each with the same calm, factual message. The children are safe and well cared for with their mother, who has legal visitation rights. Jackson left the country without securing adequate childcare or necessary medical supplies for Noah. I've documented everything and am happy to discuss when you return. Jackson's reply was immediate. You've betrayed your family. You're dead to me. I turned off notifications after that, unwilling to engage with the emotional manipulation. Sophia's attorney had advised minimal communication, focusing only on the children's well-being and legal facts. Before leaving, I assured Sophia I would remain available for support. They'll try to isolate you, she warned. The walkers close ranks when threatened. Trust me, I've seen it. I'm not a walker right now, I replied, surprising myself with the liberation in those words. I'm just someone who couldn't watch two children being used as pawns. Driving back to my hotel, I felt oddly peaceful despite knowing I'd likely destroyed my relationship with my family. Sometimes standing your ground feels like falling, until you realize you've actually grown roots. The fallout was nuclear. Daily angry calls and texts poured in from Europe, each more desperate or threatening than the last. Jackson vacillated between rage and panic. You've ruined everything. All the work I've put into the custody case. The lawyer says this could be seen as abandonment. Do you understand what you've done? I'm filing for emergency custody the minute we land. I'm adding you to the lawsuit for interfering. My parents recruited extended family members to pressure me. Aunts I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly called with concern about my mental state. My father's brothers sent lengthy emails about family loyalty and how I'd always been the problem child. My mother left tearful voicemails about how I'd broken her heart. Through it all, I maintained minimal contact, responding only with brief, factual updates about the children's well-being. Noah's asthma is stabilizing with consistent medication. Emma started a new art class she loves. Both children are thriving. What my family didn't know was that I was visiting Sophia and the children regularly, watching with my own eyes as they settled into healthy routines. Noah's breathing improved dramatically with proper medication management. His pediatrician noted the improvement at a follow-up appointment, documenting it in records that would later prove crucial. Emma's nightmares, which had been regular occurrences according to both Sophia and my own experience, decreased significantly within days. The friendship developing between Sophia and me was unexpected but natural. We were two people united by concern for two small humans, navigating a situation neither of us had created. Jackson wasn't always like this, she confided during one of our conversations while the children played. The gambling started small sports bets with colleagues, poker nights. When we first met, he was ambitious but kind. The pressure from your father changed him. She described the gradual transformation she'd witnessed, how Thomas had pushed Jackson toward higher paying, higher pressure positions, dismissing his son's interest in teaching economics in favor of investment banking. How the Walker family emphasis on appearances and status had intensified Jackson's need for visible success, even as debt mounted behind the scenes. When I finally confronted him about the gambling and the second mortgage, do you know what he said? Dad would kill me if he knew I wasn't making it on my own. That's when I realized I wasn't just married to Jackson, I was married to the entire Walker family system. These conversations helped me process my own family dynamics through therapy sessions I now conducted via video calls. I recognized lifelong enabling patterns, How I'd been the family fixer while simultaneously being labeled the underachiever. How my parents had subtly encouraged competition between Jackson and me while holding us to different standards. How setting boundaries had always been treated as betrayal rather than healthy separation. You're experiencing what therapists call differentiation, my therapist explained. Separating your thoughts and values from your family's collective identity. It's healthy but rarely peaceful. The strangest part was the unexpected sense of calm I felt despite the ongoing conflict. For perhaps the first time, my actions aligned completely with my values rather than with family expectations. The clarity was worth the chaos. Support came from surprising places. Work colleagues stepped up to cover my extended absence, my boss expressing unexpected understanding. Friends in Seattle sent care packages and checked in regularly. Even my normally reserved neighbor arranged for plant watering and mail collection at my apartment without being asked. By the end of the second week, my family announced they were cutting their trip short and flying back immediately. I moved from Sophia's apartment to a nearby hotel, bracing for the in-person confrontation while ensuring I remained available to support the transition, whatever form it might take. I prepared methodically, meeting again with Sophia's attorney to understand our legal position. We organized chronological documentation of everything that had transpired: Jackson's departure, the state of the house, Noah's medical situation, the children's improved condition with their mother. Family court isn't about punishing parents, Lisa emphasized. It's about determining what serves the children's best interests. Everything you've documented supports that being with Sophia consistently is better for Emma and Noah. I practiced calm responses to anticipated attacks, knowing my family's tactics would range from guilt-tripping to threats to performative reconciliation attempts. I secured extended leave from work, prepared to stay in Chicago as long as needed to see this through. The hardest preparation was mental, accepting that I might permanently lose my relationship with my parents and brother. Despite everything, I loved them. I understood the family dynamics that had shaped us all. I could see how my father's own upbringing had created his rigid definitions of success, how my mother's need for harmony had led to harmful compromises, how Jackson had been simultaneously privileged and pressured. Understanding didn't require acceptance, though. Some family patterns needed to end, and apparently I was the one fated to break the chain. When they finally arrived, the scene was exactly as dramatic as I'd expected. Jackson showed up unannounced at Sophia's apartment building, pounding on her door and demanding to see the children. I intercepted him in the hallway, having received Sophia's panicked text. "You backstabbing piece of garbage," he hissed when he saw me. "I bring you into my home, and this is how you repay me." My parents appeared behind him, looking exhausted and angrier than I'd ever seen them. My mother's face was blotchy from crying, my father's complexion dangerously red. "We need to discuss this calmly," I began, positioning myself between them and Sophia's door. "The children are settled and—" "Those are my children," Jackson shouted, loud enough that a neighbor opened their door to check the commotion. Emma's small voice came from behind me. Somehow she'd opened the door without any of us noticing. "Daddy's yelling again," she said matter-of-factly, clutching her stuffed rabbit. "I don't like it when Daddy yells." The raw truth of a 4-year-old cut through the adult tension. Jackson's face crumpled momentarily before hardening again. "Emma, sweetie, come here," he commanded, reaching toward her. She stepped back, pressing against my leg. "I want to stay with Mommy," she said quietly but firmly. Before Jackson could respond, the neighbor who'd been watching the scene unfolding pulled out her phone. "I'm calling the police if you don't lower your voice," she stated calmly. "These children don't need to witness this." The threat of public embarrassment, always the Walker family's kryptonite, had an immediate effect. My father stepped forward, placing a restraining hand on Jackson's arm. "We'll handle this properly," he said tightly. "With attorneys present. Tomorrow." As they retreated, my mother cast a final wounded look my way. "I don't even know who you are anymore, Isaiah." For the first time in my life, I could honestly respond. I'm finally figuring that out myself, Mom. And I'm okay with who I'm becoming. The family meeting the next day took place in a neutral conference room with both attorneys present. The children remained with a trusted colleague of Sophia's, spared from the tension of adult negotiations. I presented our documentation methodically, the state of Jackson's home when I arrived, the nearly empty asthma medication, the missed medical appointments, the pattern of canceled visitations. Photos showed the children's improved emotional state with their mother. Doctors' notes confirmed Noah's better health under consistent care. The most telling evidence, I concluded, looking directly at my brother, is how readily you left your children with someone they barely know while you vacationed across Europe. Not for a weekend emergency, but for a planned month-long trip. Jackson stared at the table, uncharacteristically silent. My father attempted to control the narrative, his business negotiation voice in full effect. We all make parenting mistakes. Jackson has provided a beautiful home and financial stability. That counts for something. Sophia's attorney, Lisa, countered calmly. Financial stability is important, but not at the expense of emotional security and consistent care. The court will be particularly concerned about Noah's untreated medical issues while in Mr. Walker's care. As the discussion continued, a subtle shift occurred. Jackson, initially defensive and angry, began asking questions about the children's routines with Sophia. For perhaps the first time, he seemed genuinely interested in their daily experiences rather than just their appearances in family photos. "Emma's really doing better with the nightmares?" he asked quietly during a break, his first direct question to me since returning. "Night and day difference," I confirmed. "She needs consistency, Jackson." "They both do." My mother, who'd been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke up. "I had no idea about Noah's hospitalizations," she admitted, her voice small. "Why didn't you tell us, Jackson?" The question hung in the air, challenging the family pattern of maintaining perfect appearances at all costs. Jackson's response surprised everyone. "Because Dad always said Walkers handle their problems privately," he said, not meeting our father's eyes. Admitting I couldn't manage would have been failing. It was the first crack in the facade, the first acknowledgement of the destructive family patterns that had brought us to this point. The emergency custody hearing later that week ruled in Sophia's favor, granting her temporary primary custody, while Jackson was ordered to attend parenting classes and gambling addiction counseling. The judge was particularly concerned about the Europe trip, noting that parental responsibility cannot be outsourced at convenience. The revised custody arrangement gave Sophia primary physical custody, with Jackson having supervised visitation until he completed court-mandated programs. Additionally, family therapy was required before my parents could have unsupervised time with the children. Most surprisingly, Jackson didn't fight the ruling. Something had shifted in him during those difficult days, perhaps seeing his children's clear preference for their mother's care, perhaps finally recognizing how his actions had harmed them. "I need help," he admitted during a private conversation after the hearing. "The gambling, the lying. It's out of control. I've been trying to live up to Dad's expectations. For so long, I don't even know what I actually want anymore." It was the most honest I'd ever heard my brother. His acknowledgement of the gambling addiction opened the door to addressing the deeper family dynamics that had enabled his behavior for years. My parents' journey was slower and more reluctant. My father initially retreated into angry silence, refusing to accept any responsibility for the family patterns. My mother vacillated between tearful reconciliation attempts and passive-aggressive guilt trips. "We gave you children everything," she lamented during one particularly difficult conversation. "We don't deserve this kind of treatment in return." "You gave us things, Mom," I corrected gently. "What we needed was honesty, emotional safety, and unconditional love." The real breakthrough came during a court-mandated family therapy session, where the therapist skillfully highlighted how the emphasis on appearances over authenticity had damaged every relationship within our family. "The children are showing us what healthy boundaries look like," she observed. "Emma's simple, I don't like it when Daddy yells has more emotional honesty than I've heard from any of the adults in this family. My father's first genuine apology came unexpectedly, during a supervised visit with the children at a park. Watching Emma carefully show Noah how to feed ducks, he turned to me with uncharacteristic vulnerability. "We really messed up with you boys, didn't we?" he said quietly. "All those years pushing for success, and look what it cost us." It wasn't a complete transformation, but it was a start, an acknowledgement that the Walker family system needed rebuilding from the foundation up. 3 months after the airport diaper bag handoff, I finally returned to Seattle. The emergency family leave had stretched my job's flexibility to its limits, but I returned with a clarity I'd never possessed before. My apartment felt different somehow, less like an escape, and more like a genuine home. I began rebuilding my own life with new boundaries and perspectives. Dating, which I'd approached with detachment for years, now felt like an opportunity for authentic connection. I found myself sharing real vulnerabilities with a woman named Kira, who appreciated my newfound emotional literacy. Work shifted too. I negotiated a more balanced schedule that allowed for regular video calls with Emma and Noah. My boss, who'd observed my growth through the family crisis, offered me a leadership role that required fewer hours but more meaningful impact. The most significant change was in how I maintained connection with my niece and nephew. Monthly flights to Chicago became non-negotiable priorities. I developed a genuine friendship with Sophia based on mutual respect and shared values rather than forced family ties. "You're the first Walker who's ever really seen me," she commented during one of my visits. "Not as Jackson's wife or the children's mother, but as a person." My relationship with my parents and Jackson remained complicated, but evolved toward something more honest. Family therapy continued, revealing generations of patterns that had shaped us all. Jackson's progress in addiction recovery brought glimpses of the brother I'd barely known existed beneath the polished exterior. 6 months after the fateful airport meeting, we attempted our first whole family Thanksgiving. The setting was neutral, a rented house halfway between Chicago and Seattle. The rules were clear: honesty over harmony, respect for boundaries, no performative perfection. Emma, now 5, created handmade place cards with everyone's names, proudly showing off her improved writing skills. Noah, nearly 3, and breathing easily with proper medical management, charmed everyone with his expanding vocabulary and dinosaur impressions. As we gathered around the table, Jackson, Sophia, now successfully co-parenting, my parents, the children, and me, I reflected on how drastically our family landscape had changed. The journey from manipulation to authenticity had been painful but necessary. True family, I'd learned, isn't built on obligation or appearances. It's built on respect, honesty, and the courage to break harmful patterns even when doing so costs you temporary peace. Sometimes standing alone is exactly what's needed to build something stronger together. When Emma asked innocently, "Are we a happy family now?" the honest answers around the table, acknowledging both progress and ongoing work, were perhaps the healthiest gift we'd ever given each other. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between family loyalty and doing what's right? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more about navigating complicated family dynamics. And if you know someone struggling with similar situations, share this video. Sometimes knowing you're not alone in these difficult choices makes all the difference. Thank you for listening to my journey from that shocking diaper bag moment to finding what family truly means.